You are listening to Serbian Radio Chicago, and I have to say I have an incredible honor to introduce our next guest today, former congressman from the state of Texas, former co-chair, head of the Serbian Congressional Caucus, and a wonderful, wonderful American great patriot, Judge Ted Poe. Welcome to Serbian Radio Chicago.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
So you have announced your retirement in 2018, and I have to say we certainly, as Americans, do miss you in the Congress. We miss that rational voice, and of course, Serbian Americans miss you dearly. You have been a great friend to the Serbs, to Republic of Serbia. But we are in an election year. I just wanted to ask you, have you been enjoying your leisure time, and would you want to come back?
Oh, well, let's see. I have been enjoying it. When I went to Congress, our 4 kids were single, and now they're all married, and I have 12 grandkids.
Wow,
so
congratulations.
Thank you. But yes, I do miss it more than I thought. I really like being in Congress, and I miss being there, especially being on the Foreign Affairs Committee. To be candid, I do miss it.
Absolutely, and the Foreign Affairs Committee, such an important part, and we will talk about that a little further. But 2020, the election year, we have been watching the Democratic debates. Super Tuesday, the field of candidates is shrinking by the day, I would say. Senator Elizabeth Warren just announced that she will be suspending her campaign. We're looking at former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. What are your thoughts on the Democratic side? And of course, and I should not forget Congresswoman from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard, in fact, is still in the running. What are your predictions? What are the challenges that the GOP faces? And what are the challenges for President Trump?
Well, I will be very candid and give you my opinion. I think that Joe Biden will be the nominee. Personally, I like Tulsi Gabbard. I knew her in Congress. I think she has a head on her shoulders. She is or was the only candidate of all the Democrats that wasn't a screamer.
Yes.
She's very calm, and I like her foreign policy. But she has, I don't think, any chance. So it's going to be Joe Biden, and of course, on the Republican side, it will be Trump. Trump, we all know what kind of person Trump is and where he stands on everything. Candidly, we don't know where Joe Biden stands on anything. He has changed over the years, and it seems to me he is just a political animal. So we don't know what he's going to do or what he's going to say or what, if he gets elected, what positions he will take. But that'll be the bottom line, and I believe that President Trump will get a second term.
So, do you expect President Obama to endorse his former vice president?
Oh, great question. Isn't that interesting? He hasn't done it up to this point.
Exactly.
And now all of a sudden, he's going to be the last man standing in the rodeo, and he may or may not. President Obama will do what is in President Obama's best interest. And I think supporting Biden will be in the best interest of President Obama and the Democrat Party. Certainly not Bernie Sanders. Even Americans, even the left in the United States, they cannot stomach, most Americans, Republicans or Democrats, cannot stomach a socialist and the things that he believes in, and then looking up to people like Castro and looking up to the Soviet Union. Interesting enough that Bernie Sanders is the only person I know on earth that went to Moscow for his honeymoon.
Exactly.
And I was in the Soviet Union at that time. I was a judge, and I was there on a judicial exchange. I wish every American could have been there with me to see what the Soviet Union was like. But Bernie Sanders was there, and he still supports the far left radical position. And most Americans and most Democrats do not support that. And if he got nominated, it would be a disaster for the Democrat Party.
So essentially, that is certainly his demise, although he does have a movement. He has a following. And are we, in certain ways, witnessing a coup against Bernie Sanders? Because obviously, we remember what happened in 2016. Are we going to see the same scenario again?
Well, I think so.
Okay.
It seems to me that the establishment that took the election away from Bernie Sanders changed the rules to make sure it doesn't happen this time by appropriating delegates, not winner take all, throughout the country for the Democrat primaries. And he does have passionate supporters. And you know who they are. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you meet one somewhere, they talk about Bernie Sanders, and they're loud, and they are passionate. I don't know that Joe Biden has any supporters like that at all.
I don't know that he has any supporters, but that's a whole other story.
I wasn't going to say that, but, you know, but they're not. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. I still know Democrats when we speak, but you're right. Nobody supports Joe Biden. They just say, well, Joe Biden can beat President Trump, and Joe Biden is not Bernie Sanders. And so that's his following. But Bernie Sanders, passionate people, and they're going to be around in 4 years, and there will be more of them. That whole generation, and the younger generation coming on board for some crazy reason, they support a socialist, communist type of country in the United States. I don't get it.
Sure. Well, many of us do not get it, especially coming from the Balkans, coming from former Yugoslavia. We understand that firsthand. But I guess we should not take all of this for granted. It seems that it's going to be a landslide for President Trump, but it shouldn't be taken for granted. It doesn't mean that people should not get out and get comfortable at this point, thinking we have this in the bag. What are some of the challenges, and especially, let's talk about this coronavirus. Let's talk about all the things that were thrown at President Trump. I think they threw everything and the kitchen sink. Nothing has been sticking so far. The economy is booming. Is there something that we can, there's always unpredictability. What are going to be the challenges for him?
Okay, and we should not take it for granted. 4 years ago, the whole world took for granted that Hillary Clinton was going to beat Trump.
Exactly.
And look, we see what we got. So we should never take. That's why we have elections, to make sure that the people get to decide. We all know the great things that the president has done regarding the economy. The left does not care. They do not like President Trump. They don't care what he does. We have gotten to a time in politics. I have been in elective office since 1981. And in the last several years, we've gotten to a point where we have the politics of hate. That is the driving force. And it's buttressed with the politics of fear. So the left they hate the president, and they are using fear tactics to try to get folks to not support him. And it hasn't worked. All of the things they've tried to, they've impeached the president of the United States. Of course,
Sure.
He's found not guilty. But this coronavirus is going to affect the economy. It is already affecting the economy. How much it affects the economy, no one knows. We cannot control the coronavirus. It will run its course. We will do everything that we need to do and we can do. But the economy, stock market is an example. Of course, the other side's already blaming Trump because of the coronavirus. It's his fault. Like the New York Times called it the Trump virus or something like that. So I think that may be one issue that we will have to look at that. But the president, I have a lot of confidence in him that the guy has more energy than anybody I have ever met and he will do everything he can because his heart is in the right place. He wants to do really what's best for the country. Mr. Biden really wants to do what's best for Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're facing, and we'll see how that coronavirus plays out. But we will hear soon enough that it's all President Trump's fault.
Sure, and we've been hearing that. I have to ask you something, and this is just my perception. We followed politics for such a long time, and you've been an elected official, especially on the GOP side. During President Obama's first election, there was a sense of very united Democratic Party. The Republicans were sort of maybe struggling a bit to find their identity. There were different fractions. President Trump seems to be that uniting force. With few here and there exceptions, I think he really has united our side. Is that your thought?
It is. Big picture. The Republicans, the president. The president has a philosophy and a plan, and he has been implementing that plan, you call them campaign promises, for the last 3 years. And they have been successful. You look at the Democrats, they have no plan. Their plan is they're against whatever the president of the United States does. That is really their plan.
Exactly.
Negative politics generally will not work in an election. In other words, if you campaign against a person, regardless, Democrat or Republican, and that is your campaign, you're not going to win because you haven't presented the American people a plan for whatever you stand for. And that's where the Democrats are right now. President Obama, I didn't agree with a whole lot of things he did. But he had a plan. He had a vision. And he, in his 8 years, he implemented as much of it as he could. He united the Democrat Party. They're not united now. The Republican Party is united. They have a philosophy of, and I like the philosophy, America first.
Absolutely.
That is a good plan.
It is a good plan. And this will be sort of a segue into a conversation about foreign policy. But of course, any predictions on the House side? Can the GOP take the House? And as I said, especially such relevant committees such as the House Foreign Relations Committee, we certainly miss those voices there. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the chances are better in the last 3 years that we will take the House because of what's been taking place on the other side. No question about it. We need to take the House so that Mike McCall from Texas will be chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Excellent. He and I went to Congress together. He is a great guy. He is wonderful. The current chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, wonderful person, but he's on the wrong side, I think, on this issue of the Balkans.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to say anything bad about him, but he's on the wrong side.
Absolutely.
Serbia will be better off if we have a person who can recognize that Serbia is a friend of the United States. It is not an enemy. That country's not an enemy. They've been with us in every war. We've been with them, whichever way you want to look at it, except one. And so Mike McCall needs to be chairman. He would be chairman if the House is taken back by the GOP.
Great, and that is great news. And I have to say, I will mention it. Representative Eliot Engel from New York, who is chairing the House Foreign Relations Committee. You're right. Maybe nice man, but on the wrong side. He did visit Belgrade recently, I have to say. But my question now, segueing into the Balkans, into Serbia, do you feel since President Trump took office that there aren't that many red lines? And we know that the perpetual issue in the Balkans, and especially the painful part for Serbia, is the issue of Kosovo. Has anything changed, in your opinion?
I do not think so. Here is the reason. This is just my opinion. The president is focusing on big picture items. He has not got down to the nitty gritty of Serbia and Kosovo yet. I think that there needs to be some changes in the people who are from the United States that work in the State Department that are in the Balkans. I think we should be more friendly to Serbia. We need to make sure that all people are held accountable for the war crimes, if we can use that phrase. People talk about the war crimes that maybe Serbia committed. Well, we need to talk about the war crimes that were committed on the other side as well.
Absolutely.
Deal with all of those. And so there needs to be some even-handedness. And the President, I hope, and Secretary of State Pompeo move in that direction to have a more normal relationship with Serbia. We need to work together. We are allies. We need to be economic allies and trade. And we need to be military allies. We need to get the Serbs looking to us for military help, not looking back to the Soviet Union or Russia now. And I can see why the Serbs do that, because they're not sure about where we stand with them. And so I hope there's some changes soon. Maybe in the next 4 years, when the president gets reelected, we'll see some massive changes in our relationship in the Balkans. Excellent.
And I ask you this in light of, and I'm not sure if you followed, President Vučić just visited Washington, D.C. He was a guest speaker at APEC. He did meet with State Secretary Pompeo, and on the sidelines of APEC, he met with our fellow Texan, Senator Ted Cruz. President Trump did appoint now former German ambassador Richard Grenell to sort of deal with the Kosovo issue. And in Serbia, at least, there was a perception that some things are thawing out, that there weren't many red lines anymore, that the line of communication is open. We have a new ambassador in Serbia. Kyle Scott is back, and now we have Anthony Godfrey in Belgrade. So the perception in Serbia is that there are changes. As a Serbian American, I have to honestly ask you, do you feel that Republic of Serbia is present enough in Washington? In other words, since the 1990s, other countries, especially we know Albanians, we just mentioned Congressman Elliot Engel, they've had their lobbyists, they've had a strategy, they've been affecting policy literally every day in Washington. Serbia hasn't done that, at least not that I know, and Serbia continues to be absent. These one-off meetings and on occasion visits to Washington, are they enough?
All right, you asked me a multitude of questions. First of all, let me say this very clearly. When I talk about the influence of the State Department is not sometimes in the best interest of the Serbs or the United States in the Balkans, I'm not talking about the ambassadors. I'm talking about, as they say in the U.S., the deep state, professional staffers. I'm concerned about them.
Sure. The long-term bureaucracy.
That fourth branch of government that runs the country sometimes, and regardless of who the president is. The Serbs need to ratchet up their presence in Washington. And when I was co-chairman of the Serbian caucus, that was one of the things that we did to ratchet up the presence of the Serbs in Washington, just to be there to let America know that this is a great community in the United States. They are just, you Serbs are a lot of like Texans, you're kind
yes, we are.
Hard-headed, I mean, not a good way, independent and passionate, and that's a good thing. But there needs to be more of that. We had when the Archbishop came in and led the opening prayer for Congress, all the Serbs from Chicago and other places showed up and in the balcony, and I've never seen that many people packed into the balcony, the gallery as we call it, for the opening prayer. That's good when we do those things. And let's not forget that the Serbian flag flew over the White House.
Absolutely.
Right after World War I, excuse me. And so we need to remind people of that, the 100th anniversary. And So yes, long answer to your question. The Serbs need to go to Washington as much as they can. Y'all are too busy working, but try to go and walk the halls of Congress, talking to Ted Cruz. Whoever decided to do that, that is a good thing. Ted Cruz is a freedom fighter from Texas and a senator, and I hope he will move forward with getting some changes in a positive way made in the relationship with Serbia and the United States.
Absolutely, and we all certainly agree with that. I will tell you honestly, as a Serbian American, I think the diaspora feels a little bit left behind at times because they feel that it is the government of Serbia who needs to take the lead on this effort, and then the diaspora will follow. So some of the organizations that even exist here are cautious because they don't know if they will be on the same agenda line, let's say, with the president and with the government. So it seems like it needs to be a unified effort, and it hasn't been thus far. So just even hearing this from you, it's so encouraging because that is certainly what we need, unified front to be present in Washington and to affect policy.
And I realize that the church and the Serbian government sometimes are at issue over certain things, even Kosovo. But there are a lot of things where the two need to be supportive of Serbs, supportive of the Serbs in the United States and supportive of the Serbs in Serbia and in other parts of the world. And I think they can do that. Just it's more presence in Washington is a good thing. And I encourage the Serbs to do that. I love being the chairman of the Serbian caucus. My chief of staff, when I was a judge, was a first-year immigrant born in the United States. And her parents worked in the underground during World War II and rescued American pilots and crew members that were shot down over Yugoslavia. And after the war was over with, they were brought to the United States by Truman. And so I know all the history of that. I love the history of Serbia. And so I'm a total supporter, but more Americans need to know about the accomplishments of the Serbs, and the Serbs need to continue to be vocal in Washington, D.C.
I very much agree with that. My question to you is there anything now that you are planning, any new endeavors in your future, anything that we could expect?
Oh, I'm working on some things. Still involved in some foreign affairs issues and some other international human trafficking issues. But there's a lot of things in the works. But I am not retired. I'm just changing careers, I guess is the best way to say it.
Excellent. That sounds very good. Well, we are coming close to the end of this interview. Anything that you feel we might have missed, anything that you would like to say to our fellow Serbian Americans and to the people from the Balkans who listen to this show, and certainly reaching into Serbia and wider Balkans?
Well, I want to thank the Serbian Bar Association for recently naming me awarding me the Serbian Bar Association Award of the Year last year.
Congratulations.
And, I appreciate that. I was in Chicago for the ceremony, and it humbled me to get that award, and the president has also acknowledged my loyalty, I guess I should say, to Serbia with certain accommodations and awards. And so I appreciate all of that personally. And God bless the Serbian Americans.
Well, thank you, Judge. God bless you. And I am sure we are going to speak soon. Serbian Radio Chicago is always a platform that is open to you. We would love to have you back on the show.
Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.